Shalom, giving all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakadash, and I belong to the Allah apostles, Allah bishops, and brothers on the great millstone. Salutations to the whole elect. This is your brother Rai Banyamia here to share another lesson. And I was reading, this old article from a few years ago, the history of the Latin America and Caribbean islands. And it just goes to show how, Esau, Edom, and the other nations, they always have us, seeking freedom and equality, but finding neither. I think that is what I'll call it. It's always seeking freedom, but finding neither. So no matter where we go, even in the land of our forefathers, Jerusalem, that has been taken away from us. And then, the other tribes, they have always traveled the world, be it Spain, South America, the Caribbean islands, Canada, so on and so forth. And they were there before Esau Edom got there. And what they did do, they created homes for themselves, and they put themselves in high position and in governments over the people. So it's nothing new. The same formula that they did back then, they're still using today. And even when you look at back in the 50s and the 60s, the civil rights era, they even did the same thing. And one of the key things that they always do is that they assist in our so-called freedom, and at the end of it, they are still over us in some form of rulership or governance. You know what I mean? So the only way we would get free of this or get out of this is when the Lord comes, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai comes in judgment. So I just want to read the article and give a few supporting edifying scriptures. So Lord willing, it be edifying unto the elect, right, to the point where in these last days you don't seek to have a refuge in this place, that you don't be comfortable with Esau, Edom, and the other nations ruling over you, that you desire the righteous rulership of our Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai and King David in the kingdom. All right. So this was presented by Thought CEO. The heading is Causes of Latin American Revolution, written by Christopher Minster. So I'm going to read it in between. I'm going to share a few precepts. As late as 1808, Spain's New World Empire stretched from parts of the present-day western U.S. to Tierra del Fuego in South America, from the Caribbean Sea to the Pacific Ocean. By 1825, it was all gone, except for a handful of islands in the Caribbean, broken into several independent states. I can say in Trinidad, Spain had a heavy influence. Spain, France, and the British, they had a heavy influence. That when they left, that a lot of the people, they spoke, three languages, man. It says, how could Spain's New World Empire fall apart so quickly and completely? The answer is long and complicated, but here are some of the essential causes of the Latin America Revolution. Lack of respect. First, lack of respect for the Creoles. Now you look that word up in the Etymon. It says a Creole is a person born in a country, but of a people not indigenous to it. So, like, you have the different Caribbean Avawak tribes of the Caribbean that were killed. They would be considered indigenous to that particular land. But whereas you would have the Chinese Creole, the Moabite Creole, the different Edomite Creole that would come there and raise children. and placed themselves in high positions over the indigenous tribes, Carib and Arawak tribes that would live there. And a lot of times they kill them. That's why they are almost non-existent um, in those Caribbean islands today. It says by late 18th century, the Spanish colonies had a thriving class of Creoles, Criollo in Spanish, wealthy men and women of European ancestry. You see that? Born in the New World. The revolutionary hero Simon Bolivar is a good example, as he was born in Caracas to a well-to-do Creole family and had lived in Venezuela for 4 generations, but as a rule did not intermarry with the locals, so they keep their customs and stuff to themselves, or they would force it upon you, which they did with Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. It says Spain's discriminated against the Creoles, appointing mostly new Spanish immigrants to important positions in the colonial administration. In the Audiencia, the court of Caracas, for example, no native Venezuelan were appointed from 1786 to 1810. And they have the audacity to always tell us to, lift yourself up by the bootstrap. Meanwhile, they put themselves in high positions over us. The kings of the Edomite kings of Jerusalem, they put themselves, over the ethnic tribes and stuff at the time, and executed unrighteous decrees over them. It says during that time, 10 Spaniards and 4 Creoles from other areas did serve. This irritated the influential Creoles, who correctly felt that they were being ignored. Second headed, no free trade. The vast Spanish New World Empire produced many goods, including coffee, cocoa, textiles, wine, minerals, and more. But the colonies were only allowed to trade with Spain, and at rates advantage for Spanish merchants. Many Latin Americans began selling their goods illegally to the British colonies, and after 1783, U.S. merchants. By the late 18th century, Spain was forced to loosen some trade restrictions, but the move was too little too late, as those who produce these goods now demanded a fair price for them. Next, heading other revolutions. By 1910, Spanish America could look to other nations to see revolutions and their result. Some were a positive influence. The American Revolution, 1765 to 1783, was seen by many South Americans as a good example of elite leaders of colonies throwing off European rule and placing it with a more fair and democratic society. Later, some constitutions of new republics borrowed heavily from the U.S. Constitution. Other revolutions were not as positive. And that is really borrowed a lot, especially when it comes to labor law. It also mirrors the U.S. Labor laws, which also goes back to the laws that Rome had instituted. So if you look at it, and really, not only in the West, but even in not in the West, not only in North America, but also in the Caribbean islands, they have the same. A lot of it, they have the same laws, but different revisions to it putting into that particular region. It says the Haitian Revolution, a bloody but successful uprising of enslaved people against their French colonial slavers, 1791 to 1804, terrified landowners in the Caribbean and northern South America. And as the situation worsened in Spain, many feared that Spain could not protect them from a similar uprising. And as they, go to, these different places, they have done the same thing in Israel as well. Grab that in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36 and 5. And this is, future prophecy. And this is happening and stuff today. Um, this is Ezekiel 36 and 5. It says, therefore thus saith the Lord God Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. So they did that to Jerusalem, and they also did that to the other lands and those small islands wheresoever our people dwell. Next heading says, a weakened Spain. In 1788, Charles III of Spain, a competent ruler, died, and his son Charles IV took over. Charles IV was weak and indecisive, and mostly occupied himself with hunting, allowing his ministers to run the empire. As an ally of Napoleon's First French Empire, Spain willingly joined with Napoleonic France and began fighting the British. With a weak ruler and the Spanish military tied up, Spain's presence in the New World decreased markedly, and the Creoles felt more ignored than ever. After Spanish and French naval forces were crushed at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, Spain's ability to control the colonies lessened even more. When Great Britain attacked Buenos Aires, that's Argentina, in 1806 to 1807, Spain could not defend the city, and a local militia had to suffice. Next heading, American identities. There was a growing sense in the colonies of being separated from Spain. These differences were cultural and often a source of great pride among Creole families and regions. Now, mind you, they seeking positions in the land that is not theirs over the indigenous people, right? Yet seeking help, from the ancestors in their homeland, but not regarding the indigenous people that live there. I just wanted you to remember that as I continue reading. It says by the end of the 18th century, the visiting Persian scientist Alexander von Humboldt, 1769 to 1859, noted that locals preferred to be called Americans rather than Spaniards. Meanwhile, Spanish officials and newcomers consistently treated Creole with disdain, maintaining and further widening the social gap between people. Now that word Creole, it also go into it changed over time. Where you would have a mixed person, people that look like Wesley Snipes, they were considered indigenous. But if you had an indigenous person that would mix with one of the with what you would call, a foreigner or migrant, they would call the child that was produced by that union, a Creole or a light-skinned person, or a red person. We would also call light-skinned people red, red man, red woman, or Creole, Just wanted to put that out there too. Next heading, racism. While Spain was racially pure in the sense that the Moors, Jews, and Romani people, Moors were, some of them were Israelites as well. The Jews, Romani people, other ethnic groups had been kicked out centuries before. The New World populations were a diverse mix of European indigenous people and some of whom were enslaved and enslaved black people. Yeah, those were Jews. Uh, it says the highly racial colonial society was extremely sensitive to minute percentages of black and indigenous blood. A person's status in society could be determined by how many six forts or Spanish or Spanish heritage he had. To further model things of Spanish law allowed wealthy people of mixed heritage to buy whiteness and thus rise in a society that did not want to see their status change. Just like the brother was discussing today at the camp. You have East Indians and stuff. They would come over here, but they wouldn't be classified as black. They would be classified as white. So there's a in a way, buying as they say whiteness here. It says this caused resentment within the privileged class. The dark side of the revolution was that they were fought in part to maintain a racist status quo in the colonies freed by Spanish liberalism. The scriptures tell us that we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come. You know what I mean? But in Israel at the time where we were kicked out and scattered, or in these different nations where we have migrated to escape persecution. I'll find that in Hebrew. Hebrews 13 and 14. Hebrews 13 and 14, it says, "For here we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come." You know what I mean? So that permanent home, that resting place that we're going to have, is only going to be established when Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, comes in and in these last days to destroy this current society and establish a new righteous kingdom. Alright, next heading, it says final straw. Napoleon invades Spain in 1808. Tired of the waffling of Charles IV and Spain's inconsistency as an ally, Napoleon invaded in 1808 and quickly conquered not only Spain but Portugal as well. He replaced Charles IV with his own brother Joseph Bonaparte. A Spanish ruled by French was an outrage even for New World loyalists. Many men and women who would have otherwise supported the royalist side now joined the insurgents. Those who resisted Napoleon in Spain begged the colonialists for help, but refused to promise to reduce trade restrictions if they won. Next heading. The rebellion. The chaos in Spain provided a perfect excuse to rebel without committing treason. Many Creoles said they were loyal to Spain, not Napoleon. In places like Argentina, colonies sort of declared independence, claiming they would rule themselves until such times as Charles IV or his son Ferdinand was put back in the Spanish throne. This half measure was much more palatable to those who did not want to declare independence outright, but in the end, there was no real going back from such a step. Argentina was the first to formally declare independence on July 9, 1816. The independence of Latin America from Spain was a foregone conclusion. As soon as the Creoles began thinking of themselves as Americans and the Spaniards as something different from them. There's no different than when the Americans or the British came to America and they lodged here and also took over the native Indians that they think of themselves different. than the British, and that's why you had that war. All right. Um, fighting against their own people. Yet in this still they have relationship and stuff with them. Uh, by the time Spain was between a rock and a hard place, the Creoles clamored for positions of influence in the colonial bureaucracy and for free trade. Spain granted neither, which caused great resentment and helped lead to independence. Even if Spain had agreed to these changes, they would have created a more powerful, wealthy colonial elite with experience in administrating their home regions, a road that also would have led directly to independence. Some Spanish officials must have realized this, and so the decision was taken to squeeze the utmost out of the colonial system before it collapsed. And all these things happen because the earth is given into the eye of the wicked. um the fight that the natives had to do even against the Creoles, and then the people that were over them in other lands, they had to fight for justice because the earth is given, especially for a time, into the hands of the wicked. And we would find that in the book of Job 9 and 24. Job 9:24, it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? You know what I'm saying? So when you go into this land, he either destroys, most time he destroys what is established, and said he built and established these places, and he killed the indigenous people, so there are no visual or written um record of such a people being there, kind of like what they did with Arawak and Spanish tribes in Latin America, those Indian tribes, and in the Caribbean islands. Last paragraph, it says, of all the factors listed above, the most important is probably Napoleon's invasion of Spain. Not only did it provide a massive distraction and tie up Spanish troops and ships, it pushed many undecided Creoles over the edge in favor of independence. By the time Spain was beginning to stabilize, Ferdinand reclaimed the throne in 1813. Colonies in Mexico, Argentina, and northern South America were in revolt. Now, if they were fighting back, can you imagine the situation of the native people, the condition of the native people, native men, women, and children that lived there? All right, but we had to wait upon Yahweh Hashem Yahushai for our deliverance. All right. I'm going to close it out with this precept right quick. It says, for by fire and by his sword will Yahweh Hashem Yahushai plead with all flesh. When it says plead, he will judge. All right. And the slain of the Lord will be many. So these heathens of that put themselves in position whithersoever they go, and call themselves Jews that are not, they will be destroyed as well, from the chief violator being, amongst them being Esau, Edom, and all the other heathen nations. So again, always seeking freedom, but finding neither. Right? So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying unto you. Until next time, I say shalom.